Hey, 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 welcome back to another episode of The In-Between. I'm your host, Elizabeth Cheney, and I am so excited. I have yet again another special guest here with me. As you can see, this is Nadia LaMantia. She is a genealogist, which some of you may think, what's a genealogist? And I'm going to let her explain all of that. But I've been talking a little bit on the podcast here recently about looking into getting my citizenship by descent for Slovakia based on my family history and heritage. And enter Nadia. That's where she comes into play. That's how I was introduced to her by a friend. And she basically has been giving me the goods, so to speak, to pursue this endeavor and live my dream of living in Europe. So without further ado, Nadia, welcome to The In-Between.
So much for having me. It's great to be here.
So you have lived the life that I am trying to pursue. You've lived in Europe. You met your husband in Europe. You're about to leave for Europe for like 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So jealous. I just literally get back from Greece yesterday and I'm like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go again. But if you don't mind, let's talk about what genealogy, being a genealogist is and kind of how you got into that.
Of course. So genealogy is something that can be confusing because there are different types of genealogists. You've got forensic genealogists, which would be somebody trying to solve maybe a cold case or something using genealogy or DNA. That's not what I do. You've got people who do like a family tree and the research about a family background. You have people who do genealogy in that they look at the DNA side of it, not for necessarily forensic purposes, but for maybe to solve somebody's looking for a birth parent or something like that. So you have these different categories. What I do mostly is the genealogy that is the family tree and just connecting people with their roots through a lot of research. I create a narrative based on all the documents that I've got access to. I have a lot of different online databases and newspapers. Newspapers are amazing to find out just some wild stuff about the past. And at the end, people get like a really comprehensive understanding of their family and who came before them.
That is so cool. Do you feel like most of your clients are kind of looking for what I'm wanting to pursue, like the dual citizenship, or is it just a myriad of reasons?
Yeah, I've had multiple different reasons, which is great. I mean, I think what draws people to it are really situational. So you have people who think, well, gosh, I don't know much about this side of my family. My grandfather was never spoken about. Who was that? Where did he come from? These kind of things, just curiosities. And then you have people just a general lack of knowledge about their family. And at some point that bothers them and they'd like to know more. And I'm just obviously think that's a great idea because people don't realize everyone's searching for a community, I think, and they're searching for who they are. And people find it in places like religion or whatever sports team they like, and they want to be a part of something. But, I think looking inward and who we come from, that's our original village. And then to know more about that, I think is really grounding.
But I think that's very interesting. I feel like it can also help you identify your sense of self in a way, especially for people who, like you said, may not know the grandfather, or like in my case, and I'll be completely honest with this on the podcast, I know nothing about my dad's side of the family. I know that, well, actually, what's so crazy is I thought we were Czech this whole time. And then you helped me realize, no, we're actually Slovakian. So
very Slovakian. Yes, you are.
Because of this new finding, but it just is so interesting. It's got my mother's interest in everything. And now she wants to research her family history because we're very much on that side of the family. And then because in just a little basic research, because you inspired something within Cindy, 1000%. She's like, I think we might be related to some lord in Scotland from however many, I don't know, generations and years ago. And I'm like, all right, well, let's let the professional get to this. So I feel like pursuing genealogy services, it can help answer questions. It can help you get a sense of yourself. It also is like fun facts that you can throw out at a party, if I can be honest. Not that that's the main reason why you should do it, but you'd be surprised what you can learn. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, even my therapist, when I was talking to her about this, she's like, well, I have a lot of Scandinavian roots. I want to talk to your person. And I was like, yeah, which reminds me, I need to give her your information. But all this to say, I feel like when you start this kind of conversation, it's something that maybe people don't necessarily think about. And then once they do, it's like this Pandora's box of information.
Exactly. You couldn't be more right about that. I was thinking about it recently, and every client I've had it's kept going.
Yeah.
Either they've started out, I want to know this, and they're like, oh, now I want to know about this side of my family, or, their mother or their friend, or because I think when people see, like, you don't realize kind of what you're missing when you don't have this. And then once you have it, it's just so not only beneficial for you, but then, too, if you have children, you can, they have questions. Here are the answers. You don't have to say, well, I think we might be, you can present them with what your family's path was, which is super cool.
I completely agree. And like hearing you say this, I mean, it's got my brain going in so many directions. In the conversations we were having before you started the research about the country lines, and I don't know, like history is so fascinating, and to know your own personal family history, even though it's so far removed from you and like your existence in this timeline and this moment, it is fascinating. It's so cool.
It is cool. And in the vein of it being July 4th weekend, one thing I think is so interesting about Americans is just kind of what we are all really unique. I don't think to say American, you can understand why people say Italian American, Greek American, whatever it is, because every background is really important in how you've come to be who you are as an American. I like to give this example. So my husband's from Albania, and because they were under communism for 50 plus years, everybody was treated the same. So it's like a very interesting example of everyone being the same. They were all poor. They were all assigned jobs, but now you have this group of people who is not intermarried, at least for that amount of time. So you have kind of this culture that's all the same. So when you go into an Albanian person's house, you know what to expect. Even if I've never been into that house, I know how they're going to offer me something to drink. I know they're going to offer something to eat. I know what kind of questions they're going to ask. It's like this unofficial playbook. I feel like Americans, you don't know because it depends how you were raised. Right. It depends what's important to that family. And so will they offer you something to drink? Will they not? Will they say, help yourself, it's in the fridge? I mean, these kinds of behaviors, it's, I think, so interesting. It just as an example of how your cultural background influences you. You don't know what's an American because we're all coming from such different mixes. So
I completely agree. And not that this is kind of on topic to this, but I know there's culture in America, and part of the culture is the melting pot of it all. But sometimes, I feel, for lack of better words, FOMO, which I know is not a very professional term here, but I feel that like missing out feeling when I see my friends who are from very like strong cultural backgrounds, and they are like the Italian Americans or the Kurdish Americans or, even French Americans, so to speak. I have such ties to this cultural root that I definitely feel like I'm lacking. And so I think another benefit of now learning all about my Slavic background, it's really inspired me to want to learn more about the culture and history of Slovakia. I mean, shoot, even like on the flight home from Athens, Greece yesterday or the day before yesterday, I was thinking, can I learn Slavic language? Like how big of a push is that? At 34 years old, could I actually learn a whole new alphabet and learn the language, especially if I do have this interest in potentially living there one day? So it's really cool. It's like opened up this little part of myself that I never thought I had, and now I get to explore and not feel, what's what I'm looking for, like I don't belong.
Yes, exactly. You now have the information in this book, and you see how much you do belong. You see what these roots are. And even, I think it was news to you that your grandfather actually lived several years in Slovakia, right?
Yeah.
That was something we found out through my research. And so it's not as far removed as it might seem, And to your point about just feeling like not connected to roots, I don't think it's too late. I will just share my own story. So I was studying journalism in college, and I had to pick a foreign language. That was had to be something with my major. So I, of course, picked Italian. And through learning that, I started to study. I studied abroad in Florence. I picked up the language. I did not know it before then. I picked it up fluently. So I'm in my 20s at this point. And then I found out that I was eligible for Italian citizenship. And I really, having studied there, wanted to keep living there. And I realized that was my chance to go back. And so I had to research my family to get the documents that I needed. And it was through that process that I really got deeper into the genealogy and saw how it can be beneficial in many ways. One thing for me that's been amazing as I've connected with my family in Sicily, that after the years apart, before there were easy ways to communicate and these brothers got separated, and now I can be with these cousins, and I've gone dozens of times to see them and they've seen me, and we have a great relationship. And that's all because of the research that I did that brought us back together. And it's just, I love that story. And I think it's kind of the drive for me to know, like, that you can look at the past and it can affect your present. It can change who you feel like you are. Like you said, it's there, but you hadn't really known or what to embrace exactly. And once you get a chance to embrace it, you may find that it changes your life like it did for me.
Oh, that is such a beautiful sentiment. And like, I feel inspired just hearing that. And not just like the identity piece of it, because I can see that just in a little bit of like breezing through this book that she put together for me, everybody, but breezing through that and just getting excited about the strong ties to that country, even though I, to be honest, did not know anything about it. Like, I didn't even know what the capital was until you said, by the way, you're not Czech or Slovak. And I was like, oh, okay.
But you're not wrong, though, in thinking Czechoslovakia, because Slovakia was once part of Czechoslovakia. So there's some truth there, but it's changed over time. But.
It's changed over time, and so has my identity just a little bit. But that's okay. But hearing you even talk about connecting to family members, it's just, I didn't even think about that, happening, like that possibility. So one of the questions I had was, how was studying it benefiting your life, or how has it benefited your life? And it's like given you, I guess, a different sense of self. It's helped you connect with family that you probably wouldn't have otherwise ever connected to, which that idea just is so exciting to me. In what other ways did this start your career path into this, or? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I enjoyed it so much, and I found it so fulfilling that I would, happily be doing it for friends. And, oh, you don't know? Let me look that up for you. And then it's a passion. And I think you really should do something you're passionate about if you have the opportunity for work. So it's something that I feel really blessed to be able to do because I love it so much. So ways it's benefited or changed my life. Well, certainly having the Italian citizenship, being able to pass it to my husband and my children like I have. I have also, my husband speaks fluent Italian, but the kids, I speak it to them, not as their first language, but I do speak it to them often because I want them to embrace their roots and to feel confident when we go there. They have family there, that they can speak it. And, they're still young kids, but they see my enthusiasm for it, and they're also enthusiastic. So that's been wonderful. And, it's little things like for my dad, just being able to tell him, you had more aunts and uncles than you didn't know about, like that died as children. I found that out for him. Yeah. It's a whole thing with that.
It's wild.
Yeah. And just being able to tell him where his name came from. So in Italian families, for what it's worth, usually the first son is named for the paternal grandfather. The second son is named for the maternal grandfather. And so his father was named for his maternal grandfather, but that name was left blank on when I did the citizenship papers. I got my great grandmother's citizenship or her birth record from Sicily, and there's no father listed. And so that was kind of a mystery.
Interesting.
And then as it happened, a DNA cousin reached out to my dad and said, I can't figure out how we're related. I have a really extensive family tree and I don't understand. So then I looked into it, of course, got my attention. And his ancestor had come from Calabria down to Sicily. He was still married and they didn't know where he went, his family, but he went to Sicily because he got together with my ancestor. They had my great grandma. His name was Giuseppe, which is Joseph in English. And that is who my dad is indirectly named after because he's named after his father too. But so my dad found that so meaningful to know like where the name came from and just to be able to fill in that gap was, for him, it was very meaningful. So you never actually know when you're doing the research, like who will find what, something that's meaningful to them. You present the information and, I'm actually curious, was there one thing that stood out to you that you found that resonated with you or that you found meaningful that you maybe weren't expecting?
I mean, honestly, the fact that it's Slovakia. I think that was the biggest thing because my whole life, my fun fact is like, oh, I'm half Czech. And to learn that, no, actually it's on the Slavic side, that really was huge for me. And I think knowing that, like, the more I'm going to dive into this and the more I'm going to learn about Slovakia and Slovakian culture, and I don't mean this insensitively, but because of the lack of involvement from my father's family in my life, it's cool to learn all about this, but it's more so just being able to pursue my interest in the culture of Slovakia and knowing that I have a place and I'm not an imposter with it. And which, now that I say that out loud, that sounds a little dramatic, but you know what I mean? Like,
I do, yeah.
It really has given me a different, when I say sense of self, I don't mean, okay, Elizabeth is now Slovakian and she is embracing all of the angles of that culture and that mindset. No, but it's like a sense of self of like another part of me that I never even knew existed. And, my whole life I have been told you look European. I'm like, well, what does that even mean? You know what I mean? And I'm like, and I go, it's your jawline, it's your cheekbones, it's your eyes, it's your nose. I'm like, and love my mother. She's amazing. And I have some traits of her, but my whole life I've always been like, I don't look like my mom, And when I see pictures of my dad, I really do take after him. So for me, it's learning you are truly half European. Like, even though, his family, like, he lived here and was born in America, but all of his ties from generations back are all Slovakia.
Oh, yeah.
That was really interesting to learn.
Yeah.
That it really wasn't that far removed, like that many generations back, that they were still living in Slovakia, even if they came here and still went back. So I don't know. I think for me, it is this new sense of identity that I get to explore and truly own, not feel imposter about it. And I'm just excited. Like, who knows if I'll actually learn Slavic? Because I looked at the language and I was like, oh my God, that is not like French or Italian or Spanish. I'm level 8 in French and Duolingo. I don't know how the Slavic's going to go. But I now have, like, I've already started using, like, when people, like the few people that have mentioned, you look European, in the past couple of months as we started talking, I now confidently reply, well, I'm half Slavic. I'm Slovakian. And I don't know if I feel the confidence to be like, I'm Slovakian American yet. I think if I learn more about the culture and feel more like a part of it, I could. Because I don't think not having grown up Slovakian, it can deter from owning that part of yourself, even as an adult.
That's right. Thanks people who take DNA tests, right? And they thought, oh, I always identified as Irish, but I'm actually not. I'm actually German. And it's like, well, what does that mean? And so you do then realize, like, when you think you're something or you don't know what you are, it really fills in a piece of the puzzle that is so important, I think, if you can know. And so I really like to encourage people to do DNA tests as well as getting the history done with the documents, just to kind of have the whole piece of the puzzle, and that helps people identify specific areas. So it's gotten very specific now, where it will even tell you like a region within a country where your people come from, because it's not the same for everyone. There's not always the same type of paper trail that we can trace. It just really depends where your people came from, when they came from there. There are a lot of resources out there, but due to wars and things, you just, at a certain point, there's some more paper trail. So DNA can be a nice help with that.
I love that.
Interested.
Yeah. I just want to say, I think the biggest blessing that your work gave me was having my whole life felt so removed from my dad's side of the family. And so, like, it's, I don't want to be dramatic and talk so harshly about how it affected me, but it is like just a missing piece. You gave me this gift of knowing. And I think that is the power in what I have gained from this knowledge. It's like I feel more whole, and it's also really freaking cool.
I'm so happy that you feel that way, that I could help you in that way. And I know that there are a lot of people out there with questions, and it may not be it may be about the whole side of family, or it may just be like a specific thing where it's like, what happened there? I don't know. And they think because they don't have connection to talk to about it, that they will never find out. But that's another part of this. When we talk about traumas and things within families, you can oftentimes get to the bottom of what happened in a situation with your ancestors, or it's something that can really be healing for people, I think, on a number of levels, depending on what your situation is. But certainly having the whole picture gives you the context that you didn't have, because there's something about not knowing that leaves this huge void, and it's like, it could be anything, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
for sure. Having known that there was such strong ties to what I thought was Czech Republic, but now learning that those, like, yes, it's a different country, which that's one thing, but learning that those ties are still strong. Like, you have all of this literal complete family history and heritage to a whole different country, different culture, just because him and his siblings were raised here in America, but pretty much everything past that was mostly Slovakia. Like, that is so cool. It's so interesting. And
you can go there.
You
know where you would go. If someone says you're in Slovakia, you can
exactly. So that, what you just said about trauma, that's something that we've talked about. Like, when we first started talking about the benefits of genealogy and learning about your history, it can help you unpack and learn and hopefully even heal from generational trauma. And so I wanted to kind of hint on that. What have you seen, whether it's in your own experiences, or with clients' experiences? Like, how has that played out?
Yeah, I can give you a few examples. So absolutely, once you start going back, you're going to find things. It's not all roses, of course, but it's helpful to know. So one client I had, his mother, I found she was in her home, and people came to the door. They tied her up. They held a gun to her. They robbed her. She was early 20s. I didn't know if he knew about that. I didn't know if that's something his mother had shared with him. A little bit of cautiousness there, but I found out it was something he knew. But he never knew what happened to the criminals. And so I was able to give a little bit of closure in sharing what sentences they received for the crime they committed against his mother. And just something like that can be just to know, because you think, whatever happened to those people? They did that to my mom, and then what? Like, she obviously, I haven't spoken to her personally, of course, but I just don't know how something like that wouldn't really affect you in your life.
Right. For sure.
Forward. So just to know that there was some justice served in that case, and just to know what that was, I think is helpful. Another client came to me with some questions about her grandfather and a bit of a unclear past about him, and kind of some rumors about some other children. I was able to confirm some things for her. Her grandmother was a second wife. It turns out he had gone back with the first wife and had another child secretly while he was with the second wife. So I was able to find baptisms and give her names. And so these are her aunts. And there were a few children. He had another child with another family member of the second wife. That was unexpected. And so anyway, these are her aunts now, that she can decide what she wants to do with that, but she knows that they're out there. And so these are things that it's something that happened with her grandfather, but it's still relevant today, because these people, some of them are still living, and she can decide if she wants to do anything with that, but at least the rumors are put to rest. And so these kinds of things really bother people over time, just like, is that true? Is that not true? And so genealogy can really help answer some of those questions.
Especially with court cases and potential police involvement, things like that, reports. I think that's very fascinating. Another thing that comes to mind, I'm curious, family medical history. How have you seen that play out?
Yeah, that is also something that comes up, because you do start to see patterns.
I bet.
You see patterns, and then you think, these are things, this knowledge is something I wouldn't know to look for this obscure disease in my family. But now that I know it exists, when they ask, do you have any family history? Maybe that's the difference between you getting checked for something and not, and being very vigilant with that. Not sure if you want to cut this part out, but for you, I wanted to mention, I saw a particular, had you seen a pattern?
I have not yet. I have breezed through the book. I've not been able, because it came in right before I left. So I am about to learn something. Hit me with it.
Okay. So you have colorectal cancer in the family. It's a certain type of cancer, but I noticed 3 people had it, and they had it young. They had it around 40 years old.
What kind of cancer is it?
Colorectal. It's through the colon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Duh.
So yeah, your great grandmother was about 40. She passed away from it. Her brother passed away from it. And I believe their father passed away from it. And so it's something that you may think, I don't have to think about that until I'm much older, because there are screenings for that, once you're 60 or something. But in their case, it hit early. And I noticed that, and again, if you want to cut
No, I love it. Come on, hit with it.
you had some uncles die young. And so I don't know.
Like my dad's brothers? I did know that.
I don't know what they died from, though. That's the thing, because I don't have access to their medical records. But you may try to find out, if you're not sure, if that was something that affected them. So
interesting.
So these kinds of things just to be aware of.
Yeah.
I mean, could be nothing to do with you, but could be something.
Well, the cancer thing, that's pretty close in the timeline, or I don't know why I keep saying timeline, but like genealogy line, of like generations back. Like that's not that many.
Not that far back. Yeah. And it's not, something that younger people typically think about.
No,
so
I'm not thinking about that.
Right.
I'm thinking about, can I get through this week?
Right. Exactly.
I'm curious with addiction type stuff. And I am speaking from a personal place because I know that there's a lot of addiction on my dad's side of the family. But do you ever see that show up in like history, generational or genealogy research?
So where we might see that might be in newspapers, and, it would have to be pretty bad for it to be in a newspaper, probably. Yeah. And so, because a lot of times documents won't show that. What you might find is on a death certificate, you might find cirrhosis of the liver for like alcohol and things like that. And so that would be your sign.
Yeah.
Something like that. Or if someone died from an overdose or that type of thing.
Which I think that could still benefit others to like not just healing trauma, unknowing, but also family history, because I think that's definitely something important. Interesting. That's so interesting.
So for trauma, to go back to that, you have a lot of people who were participating in World War II as soldiers and saw a lot of crazy stuff, along with, obviously an example would be Holocaust survivors and their children. So we know that those kind of traumas, they spill over into the next generations. You don't go through something as insane as like those types of wars and what those involved without having any kind of residual effect, whether that is alcoholism, whether it is unresolved anger, whether it is being very secretive. But those things, the children do receive those. But there's an interesting concept that's coming out now called epigenealogy, which is the study of intergenerational genetic trauma being passed. So it's something that I'm not an expert on, but there is scientific research now happening that suggests that the traumas that people have gone through in the past can affect their children, like on a molecular level, let's say, not just the environment and the behaviors that we see, but rather also can have an effect with genes. So
interesting.
It is good to know you may be, experiencing something that is passed down that you don't realize. And so having a context of your family and what they went through can be helpful even for that. So
that makes so much sense. And also just thinking, when you talk about the World War II and those kind of traumas and things that your family experienced, maybe you can't necessarily research alcohol addiction, but you can research, okay, so my dad's grandfather and his family went through all of this, and their parents and grandparents went through this war and this, playing over into the molecular level. And we know that the body keeps the score, trauma stays in the body. It can kind of maybe start to put the puzzle pieces together of like what led to potential addiction and, potential mental health issues. Like I'm going to study that when I really deep dive into the book, because it's not that I'm looking for answers to that, but I do know that my dad and his siblings, like his brothers, most of them struggled with alcohol addiction. It wasn't just him.
Okay. So that points to something, from the generation previous, which, I didn't find anything that was in the papers in terms of your grandfather's specific behavior, but certainly we found that he was in World War II. He did say that he, I think, was in 5 different missions to go on to a Philippine island. What he saw there, what he did there, I don't know. I do know he was in a traumatic car accident in the 1950s before he had children. So,
wow. That would probably answer some things. So I know he was older. I know that they were older when they had the kids.
Yeah.
My dad and his siblings.
And so, they had several.
Yeah.
And so could he was in the war and the car accident, could he have had some anger that he experienced? It's certainly possible.
Absolutely.
Even knowing that those things happened, it gives, some context to think about, what was it like growing up with someone who had those things happen to them? Your grandpa, I think, had a sister die. that was him. He had a sister die 12 years old. I'm sure that was very upsetting. He also was moved from one country to another country back to this country. So, all those kinds of things. You start to be able to put together someone's life and just think, how might that have, affected him and his children?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And both your grandparents lost their mothers very young.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So
I only met them once, apparently, when I was a baby. I remember talking to my grandmother once when I was like 8 years old on the phone, and she was such a sweet lady. I remember my mom telling me that they were older when they had my dad. And I think he was one of the youngest. So that's how it all plays out. So if anyone listening has strong family history of these kind of things, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's just general trauma, I mean, there's so many ways in which I can go. Clearly, just listening to this, we've already kind of put together a puzzle piece that might be the right way, or maybe we're off in a whole different direction. But I mean, from what you just described, that's definitely a way to affect somebody, and I can only imagine. So I can see how that really helps. And it's also wild to think about your client that learned about the whole other level of a family. The other, that's crazy, but also how healing, how
it's not just a rumor anymore. It's
right.
Like, this is true. I don't have to wonder.
Yeah.
This is who these people were. These are their names. Just being able to know something rather than just thinking this happened or it didn't happen. I don't know why. I don't know anything. You have some context, then you can kind of rationalize the hand you've been dealt, right?
Right.
And kind of the hands other people have been dealt and kind of how they played those hands.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for you and your family?
And now I also want to go back even farther in the family history, because it's like you start getting into, hundreds of years ago, and
you find people in the middle of things in history that you've only just read about, and you think,
right.
My family was there. That's crazy.
So question on that, if someone wants to go back hundreds of years, how do you research that? Because clearly there weren't newspapers that long ago.
There were some places.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The American news goes back. Well, when you think about it, for a while, America was East Coast really only. And so you do have a lot of written history there that's been archived. You have then you have European, if you can go back to Europe. I found some things from quite long ago that were in the newspaper there too. It certainly does depend what country, and not every country that had those things have them available publicly. So, it depends for each person what their family's path was and kind of what records were kept. I mean, you think about, even just thinking about my husband's country, Albania, they didn't have last names, I found out, until 100 years ago. I mean, you were just your name, son of this person. Wow. And so, how you keep records in that case.
Yeah.
How many John, son of Thomas, to say in English, just could you have,
Yeah.
So that's tricky. But there are people that are experts in that kind of decoding of what you know how each country's system works. So yeah, it's always an interesting journey when I'm looking at all.
Oh, I'm sure. What's the farthest back you've ever gone? How many years?
With my clients, I've gone to the 5th.
Whoa, that's so cool.
Yeah, that was, that was England, and England had a lot of records, but you really do kind of need to come from people that had some type of influence at that time to get anything written down from that period. Otherwise, you see, a lot of people have someone in their family that does the digging on the genealogy, but my training as a journalist has helped with fact checking. So just because somebody said it's I need proof. I need a document. I need something. I'm not just going to tell you because somebody said that, obviously. So I always am fact-based and need the evidence. And so I go as far back as
you're the best person for the job.
Well, I enjoy it. You really do. I mean, you can tell when people are interested because they either look very engaged or you start to see a glazed eye.
No, this is fascinating. I picture you when you see the crime scene is all the red ties, that is the family history in a way.
You do have to be able to make those connections and things, and we are all connected, really. I mean, I've had we talked briefly, I realized that my great grandfather and your great grandmother came to America on the same vessel. Now, it wasn't the same trip, but they both came over on that ship. They both came over as third class passengers, and just to know they were walking those same halls, and here we are, all these years later chatting. And I think just people don't realize how many connections there are. Even though your family is Slovakian, mine's Italian, they both immigrated to work in the coal mines. Yours in Pennsylvania, mine in Iowa, but there are a lot of shared, connections between people. If you knew about it, you could pull that out of your back pocket at a party. Oh, really? Because my family,
Oh, yeah. The fun facts are going to be fun facting from now on. Don't even worry. I'm going to be so obnoxious at parties from now on. Oh, well, I'm actually a Slovakian American. And I can speak Slovakian or Slovak, excuse me. Just kidding. That's still a very high expectation of a goal that I have. But either way, you never know.
When you're highly motivated, you'd be surprised.
And then, who knows if it unlocks some deep, deep internal, like, generational thing where it's like, I just pick it up so easily. I'm kidding. I highly doubt that. But wouldn't that be so cool? But it's so fascinating. And I do feel like you being a journalist makes you very qualified for this type of job because you know how to dig.
And I like to, because you need to like to, because sometimes you dig and you find nothing. And sometimes it's actually detrimental how much you dig because then you keep finding stuff and then you don't know where to stop. And you're like, I have spent way too much time on this particular thing I want to explain, and it's your own interest. And it's also wanting to get the most to your client about what you can tell them, because it's like the information is just waiting there. And you just need to like grab it and put it together and share the story.
So much more than what you can learn from just DNA testing, I feel like.
Absolutely. It's huge because it's the backstory, that cousin that came to me, like, for example, and was like, to me and my dad, like, how do we fit in? And he had the DNA, but he didn't have the story. And then I was able to give him the story. Cool. This is where your ancestor went. I was able to show him the street that he lived on until he died. And so now we've met this cousin. It turned out we both were in Chicago at the same time, and we had coffee, and it just, it's just another piece of your puzzle, and it just adds to your life, I think.
Absolutely. Like I said already many times, I keep referring to the book, what this has given me is, I actually told my mother this. I was like, even though my dad was not present, little did I know that he would give me such a gift of just his existence.
That's right. And you have a lot of strong women in your family.
Yes.
Did you read about them?
A little bit. Like, there is a lot of resentment on that side of the family because of the lack of involvement, the lack of knowledge, the lack of really care. And I can now jump past like my dad's siblings and family and look at the history and feel a part of that, even if I didn't feel a part of it from them. Does that make sense?
I really believe your ancestors would have embraced you, even if you don't feel that current side has in the way that you would like it. The sense I got from them was they were extremely family oriented. Mm-hmm. They had a lot of hardship.
Yeah. I didn't read about that.
Deaths and things. And, but they seemed to very much like to take care of their own. And so just to feel embraced by them, if no one else, I mean, it's a comforting feeling. And again, to know your Slovak culture, and it gives you a sense of, it's a deeper rooting than, like you said, you've been feeling. So
big time.
1,000%. You don't need that little strand necessarily to be a part of the whole fabric. So.
And I think that is the biggest gift that you've given, is that connection to that. So,
you feel that way.
No, and I mean that. I'm not just saying that because you're on my podcast. I really do mean that. And it really is, for lack of better words, cool, but it's really, it paints a bigger picture of yourself that you didn't know existed. So
so many people can benefit from this. I feel it's a shame that it seems a lot of times older people are interested. It's like not until they reflect later on. It's like, I think as young people, it's so beneficial. Yeah. We're thinking about who we are, who we want to be, and just having this like deeper base of who we come from and what that means and what they did to get us where we are, because it's really the sum of all their decisions that brought us where we are and, allowed us to live. And so it is substantial and has played a big role in your life, whether you've thought about it or not. So just having that knowledge is like very powerful.
I completely agree. And it all, just hearing this and also like knowing what I know now, it empowers me to like want to be stronger, more successful. Yes. But it's more like when I go through hardship, when I have mental health battles or this or that, it makes me want to push forward more to, heal whatever generational trauma ties that still may be lingering. Cause like, more than we did then, kind of thing. And it makes my resiliency, which sometimes I get frustrated by, that you have to be so resilient or this or that. It makes me feel more empowered to continue on that path. You know what I mean?
Certainly knowing what the people before you endured.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I have a great grandmother, and when I learned about everything she endured, I just thought, oh my God. When people talk about the good old days, I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Let me
Right.
tell you about my great grandma really quick. This is the one who's got the illegitimate father. So she grew up in a very small Catholic Sicilian town with parents who weren't married, and everyone knew it, I think.
Oh, that's kind of scandalous.
That's a scandal right there. She was born into that. Then she gets married in that town. She has 2 children. They come here 3 weeks after they arrive. Her son dies. So he got sick on the journey. He was 3 years old. So that's one child. She ends up having my grandfather after that. I think she was pregnant with him like around the time this child died. So you're pregnant, you've just lost a child. She ends up losing 2 more children. Her husband dies in the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918, which millions of people died. This new, she doesn't speak language. She's had all these tragedies. She gets in an arranged marriage with another Sicilian, moves, and he ends up getting shot in the face, which I found out. He lived.
Oh, wow.
He had a glass eye, and my father never knew why. And I was like, that was his step grandfather. And he's like, that's why? He's like, nobody talked about it. It's just like so it's like he gets shot. Her other daughter dies. My grandpa ends up being the only surviving child, after all these tragedies. And you just think, God, it was one thing after another for this poor woman. And yet she carried on, was very influential figure, as I understand, to her kids, her son and grandchildren, and very strong woman. And so, yeah, it's just to know these, things. It just makes you feel like, what am I complaining about? Like for myself, sometimes you think like, oh, I don't, this is like a first world problem, something that I'm upset about. And it just kind of really puts in perspective. Not that we don't all have our challenges, of course we do, but just to know kind of things that your family went through before you got here, and they made it and you'll make it. And it's just, it's just kind of a positive reinforcement.
That's what I was kind of taking from that. Like hearing that, yes, it's not just our little problems here or there, but if any, it can also help you feel like you're not alone.
Exactly.
That's kind of what I hear from you.
And you're not. Yeah. And these people went through what they did, so you could be here, so you could, be their legacy. And just,
that makes me like emotional. Thinking about, oh my gosh. I don't know why that like got me for some reason. But that's kind of what I think from learning about this side of the family. Again, I don't know much about my dad and his siblings. I know some of them have had a little bit of success, but I don't know, because I also feel a little awkward saying this on the podcast, but we can talk about everything before then, and feeling like my purpose is what I make of it, but my legacy can be to just be a light into whatever hardships that family endured. And I can take all that brought me to this point in my existence and continue on with what my heart and goal is to be a good person and put out love and put all of, to help people with their hardships, so to speak. But I don't know, like that is a beautiful sentiment to think about. Wow. I did not think I would get emotional on this episode, but here we are. I'm like, whip it in, reel in real quickly. So, oh my God.
No, it is a very touching experience to connect. And that's why I think more of us need that. I mean, people are looking for, like I said, a community, or like, and they get involved in like, this sports team, and they put all their energy in that. And it's like, you want to be a part of something, but you are part of something, and you already are a part of it, whether you know what it is or you've given it any thought. It's there and it's yours, and it's so interesting and unique for every person. And it's so valuable. And so I'm so glad that it's touched you. And
it really has. I've said this already, but it's even just this conversation is helping me realize the bigger impact that this knowledge is giving me. Because I think part of the reason I got emotional is there is so much resentment for me personally to that side of the family. And it's really beautiful to be able to zoom out of that and see the beauty from even the hardship, from the struggle, from all of the stuff, for lack of better words, they endured that brought me here in this moment with you. And I think that's the beauty of it. And yeah, I'm excited to learn more about this background of mine and the cultural aspect of it. And, it's because it's more than just me trying to get a passport. And I think that's where my interests have now changed. Because when we first started talking, it was more just like, I want to get an EU passport. I want to pursue this. This is so cool, whatever, whatever. And now it's like, I get to learn about me.
That's right. And certainly for me, having gone through the process now, I can tell you that you do, like, you have the passport, but you do feel connected. You do feel like these are my people. This is why I have the passport. This is because these are my people. And that's why I have the right to it. There's something very special about that. You feel an acceptance, certainly, and being embraced in the way that, like, this is yours. And you do want to connect with that. So,
yeah, big time. Oh, man. Well, one of my questions was going to be, what would you say to encourage others to be interested in their own family history and legacy? I feel like you've already kind of talked about that, but maybe we round this out in closing statements of what do you have to say to anybody listening who maybe this has piqued their interest? Maybe they know a little bit, like similar to me, like you just know a little piece of it, but it actually is so much more. I mean, even in this conversation alone, like I think that's why my emotions keep kind of coming to the surface is I just keep going back to the resentment of how I feel towards that side of the family and learning that there is actually a whole different, beautiful perspective that I can take on it. And that is so healing. And I'm going to sit in there so I don't cry. But I think that is very important. So I'll give you the floor to speak to what would you say to anybody and why you think this is important? Closing statements.
I think everyone gets something a little bit different out of this experience, but the main thing is the same, just a deeper sense of self. I think if you're struggling with thoughts of who am I, who do I want to be, even having a role model, somebody that you found out about when you've done this research that you can go and say, yeah, that's where I get that strength from. I feel this a bit, and now I know where that comes from. You really will see a lot of patterns. And again, it's healing. It can be comforting. It can be very informative. And, it's not something to wait until you're, older to really embrace, because it's so powerful, even as a younger person, to have this information and going forward. And you feel stronger as a person in knowing your roots and what you can be capable of and what those people were capable of. And here you are, and you have, this whole path in front of you that's yours to decide, and that they took their paths the way they did, and it brought you here. And like you said, it's a very deep emotional experience, but one that's so worth it. And that's why I would say to people, it's just once you do it, you'll know what we mean. And I encourage you to seek out your family, whether it's through me or your DNA test initially, or whoever you think would have information. And certainly ask your people that are older in your family that have information. Try to get some now before it's too late, if you have that possibility, because certainly I can find things out, but the more you're able to ask, then the better equipped you are to search. And
I love that. Well, Nadia, for anyone listening, if they are interested in learning more about your services, how can they reach you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. LaMantia Genealogy Services. That's my website, and certainly reach out any of those places, and I'd be happy to help you.
I link all that in the show notes and any of the content so they can find you there. But thank you so much for such a informative episode of a piece, a part, a whole legacy that I bet most of us had no idea existed. I know I, for one. And I'll see you in that EU passport.
Sounds good. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for letting me share this with you.
No, thank you so much. You are you're doing the Lord's work, but truly, like, here I was thinking we're going to go on this episode, we're going to talk about generational trauma. And here I am, like, literally about to cry on my own episode because the impact of what your work does. So I'm glad that our paths crossed, and I hope that you can help more people, and hopefully we resonate with some people listening. Because I already have people coming to mind that I'm like, I would love for them to use your services, because I think there is a lot of healing that can be done from that. I don't want to say I'm completely healed, but I could already feel my perspective shifting on my dad's side of the family because of what you've given me.
That's wonderful.
It's healing. So even if it's not related directly to generational trauma, it can help your own. So I think that's important. So thank you.
Thank you.